Okay, good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me? I'm assuming that you can. My webcam is not working, otherwise I wanted to just say hello in person this morning. So let me just wait a few minutes to see if we have more people coming on. All right, I think we're gonna go ahead and get started now. Let me see if I can. So thank you for joining us this morning, and I hope everyone's doing well and coping fine with this situation that we're all facing. But I thought, we all thought this is the best way to make use of the time that we have together, the time that we have in, some extra time we have. This is the best use would be to sort of spend it working on applications, thinking about what to do with applications for next fall, and hopefully things will be back in order and everybody can go on with business as usual and get to college. So just give me a second. I'm having a little trouble with this presentation. I think I might need to quit it. Start over. Sorry about this. I'm just gonna I'll not make you watch me do this for the next 1 minute. Okay, here we go. I hope everyone can see this. All right, so I just wanted to introduce myself. My name's Kimberly Dixit, and I am the CEO and co-founder of the Red Pen. The Red Pen is a Mumbai-based education consulting firm, which we help students and families kind of navigate and understand the education landscape from any age, any range, all the way from school age to up to PhD, MBA, undergraduate, everything. So there's a team of us in Mumbai. We have a lot of remote employees that work for us all over the world. We have got employees who've attended, a really wide range of universities across the world. So we always feel like we have an expert to tap at any given point if we have an issue with a specific situation that an applicant is in. So we feel that that's a great strength of our team. So I'm going to continue now and talk a little bit about what it is that you can actually do in the what it is that you can do now. And when we say get a head start and get working on it, get working on your application, what are those tasks? So here I'm going to start with this, sort of list of post-it notes that give us an idea of what those things are. So one is you can start working on your application forms, and I'm going to go through all of this a little more in detail in the next set of slides. So application forms, resume, essays you can work on, planning and preparing for your SATs and your ACTs, and also engaging more deeply with your extracurricular interests. You can do research on colleges, and also make a checklist for your school so that when school starts again, you can go and talk to your teachers and the administrators and counselors about what it is that you need from them. Now, these are the things that you can do and you can work on right now. But what's important to understand, and what I'm going to go through next, is how are these different in different places, depending on where you want to apply. So if you see here, we're going to go through each of these countries, and we're going to try to understand how the work that we can do to get ahead is different depending on where it is you're applying. And if you've decided where you're applying and you know for sure, you could go through and think about that as we go through it. You may also like to compare that to places you haven't considered, or maybe you don't know at all. And so this is a good understanding of which of these places are sorry, that was not where I want to be. Which of these places are the right destinations for you. So let me go back here for a minute to the slide that I was on. We're going to start with the US, okay? Here we go. So this is the US. I'm going to talk about the components of the application. What is the process? That is, so components means what do you have to prepare? Process means what do you have to do? And then other things you need to know about applying to the US. So of course, the US is the most popular destination, and most of the students that we work with for undergraduate applications do apply there. And it's also the most complicated application process. So we start with it and say that, you know, this is where we do see students needing to get the most support and sort of plan ahead in the most serious way, because there's a lot of work to do. So what you need to have prepared when you're thinking about applying to the US is the transcripts for grades 9, 10, 11, and 12 grade predicted scores. Now, this is important to understand because, as you'll see when we go through other countries, most countries don't ask to see your 9th grade grades, but the US does. And this is something that your school will put together for you, or they should. If you have a counseling department at school, they'll put this together for you. If you don't have a counseling department at school, this is something you need to approach them about now. And they will help you get this all the in schools. Again, that's another sort of complexity that you need to manage, and getting this information from different schools. For the US, you also need to have 1 counselor and 2 teacher recommendations. So reaching out to those counselors and teachers now and telling them that, you know, maybe in 6 months' time, you'll need them to give you a recommendation, gives them an opportunity to think about what they'd like to write about for you, and maybe ask you some questions, and also help you, you know, help them with the process if they've never done it before. The SAT and ACT scores is something that most colleges in the US require, but not all. We are more and more seeing a lot of colleges move to the test optional kind of application process. So that's something that if you don't want to take the SAT or ACT, there are options for you in the US, but you will have to do a little research on that, and I can answer questions about that later. You'll need to prepare a resume, which is where all your extracurricular activity details go. And while many universities do not actually see your resume, preparing the resume is a very important step in terms of just for yourself getting an understanding of, you know, what is it that you've done? What do you have to talk about? How do you want to present yourself in the application? So the resume is really one of the first steps that we ask students to put together. So if nothing else on this break that you have now, which may or may not be a true break, but from the free time you have, create your resume. And resume can be something like just listing everything you've ever done since 9th grade. And again, 9th grade is where the resume should begin. If you're doing something now in 12th grade that you've been doing, you know, since the age of 5, you can include that you've been doing it since the age of 5. But if you did it from age 5 to 8, it does not go on your resume, no matter how proficient or or good you were at it. So the resume is something that I encourage everybody to start right now. And even if you're much younger than the application age, maybe you're only in 9th grade right now, you can still start your resume. Start it and keep adding to it. Keep it as a live document that you can keep, that you can put information on, and then by the time you get to 12th grade, it's done for you. And you know, there's a lot of templates for resumes online, but it can be as simple or as complicated as you want it to be. But in general, a resume is an organized list of all the things that you've done, ranging from your academic achievements, your extracurricular interests, any projects or initiatives you started, etc. So that is something that I encourage every student to work on. Now, the other thing that's really complicated for the US process are the essays. The essays for the US, if a student is applying to, let's say, 10, which is a very realistic number, 10, many students apply to many more than 10, but let's say 10 selective universities, you may have to end up writing as many as, you know, between 70, you know, anywhere between 20 to 70 essays, depending on the college, because some colleges have 10 short essays and some colleges have 1 long essay, and there are many, many different kinds of essays you have to write for the US. So it's really a good idea to get a handle on what is expected in terms of essays, and get yourself working on that early so that you have a lot of the material at the top of mind, and you may end up switching it around. You may say, you know, I thought this would be my main long essay, but actually I'm going to use it for 3 different short essays, or however you want to think about it. But the earlier you start in that process, the more kind of better understanding you have of what stories you are going to tell about yourself in the application process. Okay. And when it comes to the process of application for the US, that is, how do you do it? So there's something called the Common Application, which most people have heard of if they're thinking about applying to the US. The Common Application does have over 500 colleges which you can apply to through the Common Application. However, there are other colleges like the Coalition Application, there are other application platforms like the Coalition Application, or colleges like the Universities of California, or other colleges that have their own independent application portal and platform. So right now, today, no matter what grade you're in, you can create your Common Application account, and that will be yours until you apply to college. So that is, again, something you can do right now very easily. It doesn't take a lot of work from you. Just go in, create a username and password, and you have a Common Application account. If you're applying soon, you should go, and there are things that aren't going to change about you, your date of birth and the school you attend and things like that. That kind of information you can put into the Common Application account, and you can go through it and start understanding how it works. How do you add colleges to your dashboard? How do you do research with the Common Application? So creating those accounts is something that you can do early. The other ones like Coalition, I think you can also create an account right now. University of California, their application opens later. It opens, I think, around August or September. So you can't actually create those application forms, create those application accounts right now, but just for you to know, there are many different ways depending on where you're applying. We do see students where every single college they're applying for is on the Common Application and they only fill out that platform, but it just really depends on the colleges you select. Now, once you've decided that and you've created the accounts and you're applying, you have to put all your personal information and academic details and everything in there. When it comes to what you need to communicate with your school about the recommendation letters that need to be submitted through these portals. Now, what's important about it is the recommendation letters are submitted through the portals. The teachers do not hand you a letter, which you then put in yourself or submit yourself. This is something that has to be done through the teacher. The teacher has to log in and they have to upload the letter for you. You do not see the letter, okay? So this is an important step because I think people often leave it to the last minute and they wait for their teachers to give them a letter, and that is really not how it works. So understanding the recommendation process for the Common Application in particular is important when it comes to just you need to plan that ahead. You need to see how that works ahead of time, because if you wait till the last minute, it can be quite stressful. Okay, and then interviews are something that, after you submit your application, some universities will request you to do an interview with them. So that's another thing that you need to be prepared for. And I would say that although right now maybe you haven't even applied to college and you're not even applying next year, but interviews is something that you can still work on right now. Go online and find an online course on how to do good interviews, or practice with friends or with teachers on interview skills or things like that. I mean, working on interviews is a great thing to do ahead of time, because you can never do enough of it. You can never practice enough how to present yourself and perfecting your pitch. So that's another thing that you can do ahead of time. So again, for the US, these are the final sort of bits of information you need to know. Bachelor's degrees in the US are for 4 years. The other thing about bachelor's degrees in the US is that you can change your course of study. You can change your major. So if you apply into a college in the US to study, say, business, but after the first year or semester you decide, I really don't want to study business anymore. I actually have always loved physics and I want to study physics. You can change your major to physics and you can still complete your bachelor's degree in 4 years. The US education system is very, very flexible. Some universities, I mentioned this previously as well, Universities of California, but also MIT, Georgetown, they have their own application platform, and that does take a bit of extra time to complete and fill out and write the specific essays for those colleges. Subject tests, which are SAT 2 subject tests, sometimes they're called, and they can be in particular subjects like math or a science. Those are required by a few highly selective universities, but not all. So not all students need to take subject tests. So once you need to research your university so that you know whether your top choice or your most realistic choice requires or recommends the subject tests. Early decision or early action deadlines are around November 1st. Sometimes they're November 15th. Regular decision deadlines range all the way from November 15th, which is like Georgia Tech, University of Washington. Those can be, sorry, oops, something happened. Apologies. Okay, I hope you can see that back now. Okay, sorry. And then the range you can see is from November 15th all the way to February 1st, but the majority of the application deadlines are around January 1st. So you need to think about that as kind of your target if you're applying to the US. And then some universities do allow the resume upload option, which I did mention before that not all colleges do see them, but the resume is a very, very valuable document for you to just get things in place and understand yourself and your story and your activities and things you've done. Now, the resume upload option, the resume sort of process and creating it, another reason to do it right now, sorry, is that when it comes to these recommendation letters that I was talking about and connecting with your school about what they need to do, maybe you're new to your school, or maybe your teacher just wants to see everything on one piece of paper, so you can hand them your resume. It's a very, very good document to keep ready and polished. Okay. Okay, I'm going to move on now to the UK. The UK is, I would say, probably the second most popular destination that we see students applying to. So I'm going to go through the same topics for the UK. And here we go. For the UK, things are quite different. They do not ask for 9th or 11th grade grades. They just want to see your grade 10 final results. So if you've done IGCSE or ICSE, they will want to see your board marks. If you haven't done it, they'll want to see your 10th grade final grades. And then they want your 12th grade predicted scores. And that is all they need to see. They do not need to see any other academic reports. They only require one counselor or teacher recommendation and a 4,000 character personal statement about why you want to study the course you've chosen, say economics or whatever it is. Now, when we say, now this looks very brief and sort of uncomplicated as compared to the US, which it is. So when you see this, what you'll notice is all of this, there's just one. There's one there's one personal statement, there's one recommendation, and there's two sets of grades, and that's it. The UK does not want a whole bunch of teacher recommendations. There's no way to submit it. It's a very centralized platform where you go to UCAS, which is the second bullet point here, complete the UCAS form. So you go on the UCAS website, you apply to only 5 colleges. Everyone in the world can only apply to 5 colleges in the UK. And every college sees the same personal statement. They see all the same material and information. So there's no, it's not like the US where one college wants to see one thing, another wants to see another thing, and then you kind of are constantly having to track all those moving parts. The UK is much more simple for those 5 colleges. The main difference is, there are 2 main differences. One is that you cannot apply to a course if you haven't met the minimum entry requirements. Now, what I mean by that is, suppose you want to apply to London School of Economics and Political Science, also known as LSE, right, for economics. If you go on the website for the economics department at LSE, there will be a link, or there will be sort of a link for course details or entry requirements, and it'll say right there, if you're an IB student, you need to have taken math, either AA or AI, I can't remember which it is, at the higher level, and you have to be predicted a grade of 7. Now, if you are not predicted a grade of 7, or you haven't taken math at HL, you've only taken it at SL, you cannot apply for that course. Okay, so you have to have met the minimum entry requirements if you are applying in the UK. You cannot just choose based on colleges that you like or locations that you like, or that kind of thing. You have to have met the entry requirements. So like I said, for economics, often the entry requirements include math. For engineering, the entry requirements will include physics and math, and oftentimes chemistry. So those kinds of requirements will be listed very clearly on each and every university's course website. So that's the biggest piece. That's why that's the first part of the process here. Before you can do anything, you have to research that, and you have to choose those courses and make sure you meet the minimum entry requirements. So if you're thinking UK is one of your top destinations and you have time right now, I would say that researching those entry requirements and getting an understanding of what you're actually qualified to apply for would be a great use of time right now. When it comes to the other pieces here, you can request recommendations from your teacher or your counselor, only one and it can be either a teacher or a counselor. And some schools have very specific ways of doing this, so do check with your school. So that's something that you can request. And then you have to upload your personal statement. The UCAS form is not, it is open right now, but I don't think that you can start filling it out and start requesting recommendations yet. Usually that starts in May. So you have a little bit of time before you can do that in the UCAS form. The other thing that I wanted to say here is that your school is, depending on where you go to school and how many students from that school apply to the UK regularly, your school is responsible for submitting the application finally. That is, if you've completed everything and submitted from your end, your school has to kind of put in their stuff, that is the recommendation and whatever grades, particular grades they need to put, and then they release the application. So the school is quite involved in the application process for the UK. Now, if you go to a school where not many people ever apply to the UK or no one applies abroad, then your school may not have the system set up, and you can do what's called an independent application, which is slightly different. So do keep that in mind. All right, so I'm going to go to the next point about the UK. That is just the key and additional information. Most of the programs in the UK are for 3 years, except unless they're engineering or programs in Scotland, or a program which includes a year of industry or something like that, then those will be 4 years. Application deadlines for most programs is January 15th. However, if you're looking at Oxford, that is Oxford or Cambridge, medicine, veterinary science, or dentistry, the deadline is earlier. It's October 15th. And this is important because you don't want to miss that. You don't want to realize on December 1st that you wanted to apply to Oxford. It's too late. You can only apply to Oxford or Cambridge. You cannot apply to both. So if you're thinking about one or the other of those, start researching the courses now. Start researching the way the curriculum is set up and what works best for you. Now, the Oxford process, that is Oxford or Cambridge, requires course-specific entrance tests, and they also offer selective academic interviews for students who've cleared the entrance test. So if you've done well in the entrance test and they want to do the academic interview, you will be called for the academic interview in December. Many students are not called for the interview, but if you are, it's academic. It is not a behavioral or a personality-based interview. It's an academic interview with faculty on a specific academic topic. So you need to be very, very well prepared for that. So for example, if you're applying in PPE, let's say politics, philosophy, and economics at Oxford, it's a wonderful course and many students are interested in it. But what we find with a lot of students is that they've studied politics and economics to some degree in school, but they're very unfamiliar with philosophy. Now, if that sounds like you, a great thing to do right now would be to get online and find some courses on philosophy and understand what it is. What is philosophy all about? Why does it interest you? How do you answer philosophy questions? Also, go on the course website at Oxford. They give you recommended readings. So preparing for those Oxbridge interviews now through additional readings that are suggested by the university itself is a great way to use your time, okay? The other point about the UK is they all offer conditional admission. So if you submit your 5 applications, and let's say one comes back unsuccessful, you're not given an offer, and the other 4 come back with offers. Now those offers will say, you have to achieve, if you're a ISC student, you have to achieve, an overall 90%, and you have to get a 89 in math. They'll give you specific conditions you have to meet in your final grades. So if you've met those conditions, you can accept the offer. The offer will be sort of complete. You'll go. You can attend. If you don't meet the conditions, the offer is rescinded. It's taken away, and then you have to go to your second choice university. If you don't meet the conditions of your second choice university, then you have to go into what's called clearing, and you can only choose 2 universities in the UK as your 2 choices. So I'm not going to get into a lot of detail with that, but it's just something to understand that your final results of 12th grade do matter for the UK, and you have to meet the conditions. Okay, I'm going to move on now and talk a little bit about India. So as many of you may know, India now has quite a few colleges that are sort of created on the liberal arts model, that is liberal arts and sciences, where they don't have kind of a very structured curriculum of traditional Indian universities. So I'm going to talk about those for a minute. So those colleges, again, like the UK, only want to see your 10th and 12th, 10th transcript and 12th predicted scores. They want one teacher recommendation. They will accept the SAT or the ACT, or you will have to sit for a specific entrance test. So if you know that you want to attend an Indian college, one of the new Indian liberal arts colleges, look at the testing requirements, decide what tests you want to take, and start preparing for it. That's some way to use your time right now. The resume, again, your extracurricular activities need to be outlined there, and that needs to be prepared for these applications. And then the essays, again, are something that you could work on now for these colleges. Like the UK, or similar to the UK, there are entry requirements for the university courses and majors. So researching those is something that you need to do before you can get very far along in this application process. And then each university has its own specific application platform. There is not a centralized platform for these colleges. So you have to go to each and every one and create an account and complete it and submit it through their portal. And again, something you can do is inform your teachers now that you'll be asking for them. Another really big part of the application process for the Indian liberal arts colleges is the interview. Almost every one of their application process includes an interview, and it's very important that you do well in this interview. We've seen very strong students who didn't prepare or didn't take the interview part seriously, and they were unsuccessful. So though I think a lot of people look at and say, oh, Indian liberal arts, new colleges, that's a great backup plan for us. It's not a backup plan. These colleges are very competitive, and people prepare very seriously for them. So preparing for the interview as well as the testing for these colleges, it's important. In India, the bachelor's degree course is 3 years. I just like to say this because I think when people hear liberal arts, they think arts, which these colleges are not arts colleges. They offer all majors except for pre-professional majors like engineering and business. So they offer majors in social science, humanities, science, which includes all of these, international relations, history, literature, economics, computer science, psychology. All of those subjects are offered at the Indian liberal arts colleges. Most of the universities have 3 to 4 application rounds, which is quite interesting. The US, as I said, has 2. UK has 1 mainly, unless you're applying for the competitive courses, then it has 2. Indian liberal arts colleges have up to 4 rounds. So do research what those rounds are, when you think you'd be able to apply, and what the requirements are. And the specific deadlines can be found on their websites. Okay, and the last thing, I just wanted to put this here, just a list of these colleges in case you don't know which ones I'm talking about, but Ashoka is one of the most well-known. All of these colleges are still accepting applications for fall of 2020. So if you are a student who was thinking about taking a gap year and then applying somewhere, you can still apply to these colleges. And that's actually very true of colleges in other countries as well, but I wanted to make that point. Okay, moving on to talk about Europe. So Europe is interesting, and I haven't I've only covered 2 countries in Europe in full disclosure. I'm only covering Netherlands and France. And in France specifically, I'm covering the Sciences Po University, which is basically the political science. So political science, economics. So students who are interested in global economics, global studies, international relations, politics, all of those things could look very seriously at Sciences Po. It's one of the most renowned institutes in the world for these subjects, and many great political leaders in the world have attended Sciences Po. It's very, very reputed, but and we do have quite a few students from India who go there, and the courses are in English. So it's a great option for students who think that they're interested and passionate about international relations or political science. And the other country I'm going to talk about is the Netherlands. The Netherlands, I'm talking about all the universities, but I will kind of talk about, as I go through these points, I'll tell you which applies to which. So grades 10, 11, and 12 predicted is what they're looking for at your grades. And when I say here, note format of transcripts may be specific in some countries. So in particular, I think the Netherlands requires you to submit semester-wise or year-wise grades or something specific like that, in the sense that you will have to go to your school if your school reports, you know, term-wise grades, or they report 4 terms in a year, or they only report, you know, something. You need to make sure that you've got it in the right, that your school is getting the transcript in the right format. So it's different, and it's something that it's a little complex, and it's something that the teachers need to and administration need to be aware of ahead of time if you're thinking about applying to the Netherlands specifically. You need to prepare your resume. European universities want a lot of documentation. So they want your passport copy, your financial documents, and as you'll see later, they want, France, Sciences Po wants your tax returns for 3 years. I mean, so do be prepared to, if these universities interest you, be prepared to do that research now and understand what is it that you have to kind of collect in time for the application process. That's a great sort of task for parents, I think, at this point. Recommendations and diploma statement. Now, diploma statement is something unique to the Netherlands, where it's basically just a letter from your school saying that you have completed school requirements. It's a very specific format of letter. It's not required for anywhere else in the world, so it's something that you specifically have to go to your school and ask them for if you're applying to the Netherlands. And then the personal statement or letter of motivation is similar to what we call the personal statement for the UK. That is, it's a statement that is really about your interest in the academic subject, what you already know about it, why you're interested in it, why you'd be good at it, and what your future goals are in terms of that. So it's not long, but it's quite specific around you and the course of study you're choosing. Now, the process of application, again, I said this is a broad recommendation, that is research and decide on programs, and that's probably, you know, that's quite broad because we're talking about Europe, which is a big place. But when it comes to that, you know, if you're looking at the Netherlands, there are many different kinds of universities. There's research university, there are technical universities, there are liberal art, there are what they call university colleges, which are like liberal arts colleges. So researching all these different types and figuring out what it is that will work for you is going to be an important part of what you can do right now if you're looking at Europe, but you're not quite sure where. And each and every, and just again, researching the programs, even within Sciences Po, there are 6 campuses, and they also have many joint programs. So there are programs between, so you do a year at Sciences Po in France, and then you do a year at, say, Columbia University in the US, or LSE in UK. So there are joint programs that you might want to apply for, and they have specific requirements. So looking into all that and deciding, you know, what is the best option for you. And each and every, you know, the Sciences Po has its own application platform that you can look at and sort of work on. But whereas the Netherlands has something called StudyLink, and you can, I think, select 4 colleges in there. And once you go to StudyLink, you put in the 4 colleges, then those colleges come back to you with access to their portal. So again, the process is a bit involved, and it's something that you only will do later. As you can see here, the deadlines vary, and they begin in January. So January is something that, you know, is much later, January 2021, if you're applying for next year. So you have a lot of time and to kind of wait for those portals to open. And here I've said some cases determined by published interview dates or selectivity of courses. So what that means is that Sciences Po, for example, requires a very serious and in-depth interview, and that those interview dates are published, and you have to apply something like 6 weeks ahead of the interview date that you want. So if you want your interview date to be in India, you have to apply within 6 weeks ahead of that. If you're okay to wait and do your interview in Dubai, then you can apply later. So you see what I mean? So it depends on where you're planning to interview. And when it comes to selectivity of courses in the Netherlands, for example, there are courses called numerus fixus, which means they're just limited seats, and those application deadlines are typically earlier, and they're more selective. The sort of selection process for those, and then interviews are also a part of the process for Europe. And specifically, if you're interested in Sciences Po, pay very careful attention to the interview process, because it is very in depth. There are things like, you know, there's a panel of interviewers, and they'll give you a newspaper article to read, and you have to respond to it. It's very you have to be very well prepared for the interview if you're looking at Sciences Po. So that is something. Go online if you think that that's the university you're interested in. Go online, understand the interview process, and start preparing for it. Okay. Yeah, so this is just generally some general information about universities in Europe. One is that decisions can take 4 to 8 weeks. The Netherlands has 15 university colleges based on the liberal arts model, the US liberal arts model. They're 3-year colleges. So that's something that I think is very unique and interesting about the Netherlands that many people don't know. And Netherlands also has, besides these 15, has many courses in English. And also the cost is far lower than the rest of the world. So it's a very good option for people who want to be closer to home, save some money, yet get kind of a broad education and something that they can then decide later how to specialize and do a master's. So I really like the Netherlands education option. Sciences Po does not accept recommendations from language faculty, and that's important because I think a lot of students who are interested in international relations are very proficient in foreign language and they want to submit that recommendation, but it's not accepted. I mentioned this earlier, they require 3 years of tax returns, and then some of the universities will give you conditional admissions officers and admissions offers. But not all, so you have to kind of understand that once your results come. Okay, moving on to Singapore and Hong Kong. Again, another set of options that get rid of that. Okay, another set of options that are close to home. People are very interested in Singapore and Hong Kong because they offer good, especially technical degrees that are close to India and are more affordable. So their applications are similar to some of the others we've spoken about. You require a resume, semester or year-wise transcripts of grade 10 and your grade 12 predicted scores, 2 counselor recommendations. A personal statement can range anywhere from 300 to 1,000 words. I think Hong Kong is something like 300 and some of the Singapore ones are up to 1,000. So, and then depending on the college, they may ask you for additional essays as well. And then each college in either of these countries, Hong Kong or Singapore, has their own separate application portal and form. They do not have a centralized system. Again, you need to research the colleges in these countries and understand the minimum entry requirements to see if you can, if you're eligible to apply. And again, some have specific subject requirements, like engineering in Singapore is quite competitive and has very high requirements. And again, for specific courses here, the SAT or ACT may be required. And that is particularly true, I think, of NTU, if I'm not wrong, but the colleges in Singapore do require SAT for some of their courses. All right. These colleges are very good for students who are looking at technical fields or management. They may be weaker in other subjects. However, having said that, if you're interested in studying, Asian history, it's probably a great place to study that as well. But the thing about both of these locations is they're very competitive. I think oftentimes we meet people who say, oh, Singapore's our backup. It's not a backup. It's Southeast Asia is a very, people are academically very strong, and there's a lot of students trying to study in Singapore. So it's not easy. It's quite competitive. So keep that in mind and prepare your academics accordingly. I think, as you can see here, the rest of these points are about dates, but they're later than the US and UK for the most part, 3 to 4 year courses. And oftentimes some of these programs have really interesting study abroad semester options. So you can do sometimes, I think it's University of Hong Kong has a sort of exchange, an integrated exchange with UCL or something in London. So that kind of, again, maybe you want to go away to college, you don't want to go too far, so you go to Singapore or Hong Kong, and then yet there's a built-in opportunity for you to go somewhere else as well. So those are really interesting options you can research right now. And conditional admissions are part of the offers in Asia. Okay, so here's some, again, I just wanted to give this list because these are some of the most reputed programs in English in Hong Kong and Singapore. Okay, moving on to talk quickly about the timelines. So I've gone through all these countries for the most part. I think I've left out Australia, which is right here. But as you can see, purple is the US. So as you can see, the US, really the application where this timeline is 12th grade, right? August of 12th grade, and through April or May, depending on when your school year ends. But as you can see, the US, everything is kind of bunched together before December, whereas, you know, Europe is way over here in February and April, and Germany, Spain, which I didn't even talk about because they have very, very few courses in English, those are even later. Canada, I also didn't speak about. January 15th is the deadline. Their process is similar to, more similar to the US, but it's kind of a hybrid between the US and the UK. And this is just to give you a sense of, you know, Hong Kong applications open in September, but they're not due till January. So you can work on them any of these months that suits you. But if you're looking at the US, for example, and you are sitting right now in March, this isn't very far away. August 1st isn't very far away to start. You need to be prepared to start in August, right? So you have a lot of work you can do ahead of August. And that's true for all of these. So I think no matter where you're applying, there's always a case to be made that you can start ahead. And again, I just want to go through my checklist again, now that I've talked about all the countries, and just say that, you know, when it comes to the application forms, as I said, the Common App and the Coalition app are open now. You can start those now. The others, maybe they're not open, but it wouldn't hurt you to go online, understand where they are, what they're like, what kind of information you need to collect for them. UCAS, which is the UK application platform, UCAS, UCAS has a lot of resources on their website on how to apply, how to prepare your personal statement, how to just all kinds of questions and resources and things. So I really highly recommend looking at the UCAS application platform if the UK is something you're interested in, because I would say that almost all your questions can be answered there. The resume is, again, something I mentioned. Really, everybody should start a resume right now, no matter how old they are or what they're doing, because your resume is something that you can use, whether it is handing it over to your teacher to help them know you better, know things you've done outside the classroom, or whether, you know, a college is visiting and their representative, you meet them and you want to hand them your resume. It's always a good idea to have your resume ready. The other point is on the essays, you know, going through some of the maybe some of the UCAS resources on how to write a personal statement would be really helpful right now if that's something you're interested in. Also, if you are thinking about the US and this idea of all these many essays kind of makes you wonder what is it that people are talking about, go online and see what are some of the essays at some of the top colleges. How would you, and start answering those questions. Ask yourself, how would you answer the questions? Nobody's ever going to see the answers you write right now, but it gets you into the practice of, you know, seeing those essay topics, writing the answers, asking yourself if you think, you know, this is what you'd want to say, if this is how you want to present yourself. So getting a handle on the essays now, whatever stage you're at, is really good, whether you're applying next year or whether you're applying in 2 years down the road. But essays, if you're applying next year, I think essays is something that you should start now. Just, you can work on your Common App essay, get it, figure it out, understand what you want to say, start showing it to people. I've worked with many students who've started the process now and have kind of got their Common App essay done, and within a couple of months, they're like, you know, I don't like this essay anymore. I want to work on something else, but I'll use the material from this essay for, you know, maybe some of my shorter essays. So things can change a lot, and the sooner you start, the more perspective you get on what it is that how you want to present yourself. Planning the SAT and ACT and extracurricular activities. So now one of the things that I didn't mention is, like, for example, for UCAS, suppose if you decided that, you know, I really do want to apply to the UK in psychology, and you realize that, you know, most successful students at, you know, UCL who have applied in psychology have done an internship in psychology, or they've done an extra course in psychology, or they've, you know, shadowed a therapist or something. You need to figure out, what are you going to do to, in terms of extracurricular activities, to enhance your profile so that you can be more successful. So planning some extracurricular activity work when to do later when you can do it is one thing. You can also just say, you know, I can't do anything right now, so I'm going to do online courses, or I'm going to read some research studies, or in some other way enhance my knowledge of a subject, because you will have to show that you understand what is psychology, why do you want to study it, what do you like about it. There's many different branches of psychology. I mean, just getting a deeper understanding of the subject through extracurriculars is one thing you can do. All similarly with SAT and ACT, maybe you're going to apply to engineering in Singapore and you're like, oh, I didn't know I had to take the SAT. Now you know, so you can start planning and preparing for your SAT tests. There are lots and lots of online resources that you can use right now to work on your SAT test. College research is another big thing that you can do right now. You can go online, research different curriculum, different faculty, different student clubs, different countries. Like I've shown you a whole bunch of countries here. I've not showed you a lot also. There are many more. Canada, Australia, I didn't even touch on. But doing a lot of research and making, you know, maybe a list for yourself of different criteria and how each college or each country matches the criteria that you're looking for can be a really valuable exercise right now, so that, you know, nine months down the line you're in the right place, right? And then finally, school checklist. I think a lot of times people realize right now that, oh, I didn't realize my school had to be so involved in this. And the more advance notice your school has, the better, and the more willing they are to support you. Because as soon as you start asking them for, you know, as soon as you start asking them for things at the last minute, they'll be kind of unwilling to support you. Okay. So make that checklist, and then once school opens, submit it to them, or go have a meeting with them and discuss with them what you need. So that's it for you know, our presentation. We have lots and lots more resources, a lot of very specific information we can share with you, and also you know, a lot of kind of advice we can give on specific situations if you have questions. So please contact us, reach out, and let us know how we can help. Right now, I think I'm going to take some questions, and I'm just going to wait for those questions now. Okay. The first question I see here is, can you explain the Canadian application process briefly? So the Canadian application process is again, it's university by university. So each university has its own portal, and you can apply independently. So that's one way to apply to the Canadian universities. The other thing is that Canada also you can apply by province. So if you're applying to 5 colleges in Ontario, you can apply through the Ontario application and apply to those 5 colleges. And then each college might send you, so then you kind of get, then you get access to their portal, and through their portal they may ask you some more questions or require more information. So and besides that, the Canadian universities typically they don't really require many essays. But again, like I said, if you apply, once you apply, usually the application process doesn't, the essay isn't part of the application process, but then after they receive your application, they will come back to you with essay questions. So there's kind of a little bit of back and forth with essays when it comes to Canada. The other thing to understand about Canada is that most programs don't require essays, and they don't require the SAT, and they only require your 10th grade and your 11th grade results, and they will look at your predicted grades, but they don't sort of put a lot of weight on them. So the process is a little bit more simple. Okay, I'm going to go back up to my next. I hope that answers your question about Canada. Netherlands cost of undergraduate studies. You know, I don't want to get that wrong, but I believe it's something like 8 lakhs a year, but I don't want to get it wrong. So we can get back to you with an answer on that one. Wow, okay, I'm trying to go in order from top to bottom. If the SAT gets canceled, the school grades will be the only academic data that will be evaluated in the admissions committee. That we don't know a lot about right now. We don't know how colleges are going to handle the cancellations or what their expectations would be. But assuming that every sitting is canceled, then yes, I mean, they will have no other data. But I do suspect that we will see colleges having a more sort of liberal view of the SAT and ACT requirement. If a child is an MYP program, would you recommend doing the e-assessments at the end of 10th grade? Or would I recommend it? It really depends on where you're applying. I think that if students are going to apply to colleges in, say, the UK, then maybe. If you're looking at the US, it's really not required. But again, I think it also depends on how your school is conducting those. If anyone on my team has a better answer to that question, please let me know and feel free to answer it. But I think it really depends on where you're applying and how it's all being conducted in your school. But it's not required. What is the application for? Deadlines, liberal arts colleges in India. So there are, like I said, there are 3 to 4 deadlines in India for those colleges, and they vary. So you'll have to look them up depending on the college. But so they can start very early as October, and they can, I think there's still rounds open for this year. Can I explain the Canadian process? I did that. The next question is, can you give me a list of undergrad engineering universities in Germany and the Netherlands? So in English, Germany is not an option. There are no engineering universities in Germany in English. There may be a few courses in English, but the German language requirement is very, very high. So it's very difficult for most students who are not native speakers to access those universities. So I wouldn't recommend looking at Germany. Again, the Netherlands, there are technical universities in the Netherlands which are very strong in engineering, like I think Delft, and that's the one that comes to my mind. But many of them are very good. You'd have to look them up. And again, if someone on my team has a specific list of those, please send that to me. Is there a checklist document for students? So there are many. Do we have a checklist document for students? The students that we work with, we do have checklists and we do have tasks that are assigned. But if you're just looking sort of at, you know, a checklist for 10th or 11th graders, there would be many out there that you can pick up online and use. I think even like I said, UCAS will have some resources. Even the Common App might have resources. If I run out of time for these questions, I just want to let everyone know that your questions will be answered over email. Any set of activities students need to complete. I don't know what that means. Extracurricular activities. There's no prescribed set of extracurricular activities that students need to complete. Students need to follow their interests and engage with those interests in ways that are meaningful to them. That's really our best recommendation. And depending on what age or grade the students are in, they may or may not, you know, they may be getting into leadership roles, or they may just simply be joining those activities. So, and then progressing up and getting deeper into them. But it's really important that students follow their own interests and not try to kind of tick boxes on the application process, because that doesn't really ever work and it's not an organic process. So the next question is about deciding career choice and testing that is available. So it really depends on, I guess, the student and whether they feel that this would be valuable for them. Because for what we find is with a lot of students, you know, while it may help you to start looking in particular directions, I think deciding a career choice in grade 10 is very, very young. Children are very young in grade 10. Their interests can first of all change, and more importantly, you know, as we all know, the jobs that will exist in 10 years don't exist today. So what's really important for students is developing skills and developing the ability to, you know, kind of solve problems and think creatively and laterally. So I think it's important for students, again, like I said, to follow their interests and their strengths. If they find that they're really, really good at something, finding ways to extend that and deepen that is always a good thing for a student in grade 10 to do. I'm not a huge fan of psychometric testing or aptitude testing, which pigeonholes a student into, say, engineering, medicine, or business at such an early age. I think, you know, students studying any of those subjects through the 12th grade is much more valuable. Because the skills, like I said, are what is important. Okay, next question. If a student wants to study computer science at University of Washington or Purdue, is it better to apply for another program? Because computer science is extremely competitive and then transfer later once in the university. I think in University of Washington, that may not even be allowed. Sorry, it's not allowed. If you apply in and you're not admitted, then you cannot transfer in later. So, but you know, it is competitive to get into. If you University of Washington, you could just apply in pre-engineering or pre-science, and then after 2 years apply into engineering. But it is very competitive to apply into that engineering program 2 years later. So there are no guarantees. You can try that strategy, and it's perfectly fine. But there will not be any guarantee that you will actually get into that computer science program 2 years down the road. So you need to be open to that possibility. So for college research, would I recommend any other sources besides the college websites? So I guess it really depends on what it is you want to know, right? So if you want to know, okay, I'm interested in psychology, what are the psychology courses at a particular university, then obviously the university's website is the best place for that. If you want to compare something like graduation rates or class size or, you know, different attributes of an entire college like that, then, you know, there may be other sources that aggregate that information that would be better. And I think people look at US News or Niche or gosh, there's so many. So there's no kind of right source. Okay, I'm going to answer one more question and then we're going to end this. But I've really enjoyed this. I hope you guys got something out of it and understood, you know, what you can do now. So does writing the NTSC help in the application process in India? So I think writing the NTSC will help just as an award or achievement. It does help from that point of view. It is it recognizes, you know, depending on how you do in the exam, it recognizes your skill and proficiency. And yeah, that seems like I got through all the questions. Thank you so much, and we will answer any questions that we find later or that we haven't answered, or any other follow-ups. We will send you over email. So thank you so much, and please be in touch with us if you need anything else.